Good morning, everybody. It is Wednesday, April 15th. It is tax day. And on this tax day, we're not going to talk about any of that at all. We're going to talk about way more awesome stuff with my friend, the genius, the voice of design build, the man, David Supple is here, man.
Thank you, Dave.
So pumped to have you here. We haven't talked in a little while, but I want to dig into what's going on right now at New England Design and Construction up in Boston at some point, as you're the owner of it. But I have to start this with your journey into design build. Like, your story is like one of my favorites of all time. It starts in architecture school, right?
It does, yeah. First off, you are my brother in arms, Dave. It's been, we haven't spent like a voluminous amount of time together, but it's like I could just talk to you forever at any moment. Really appreciate and the example that you set, and you doing this platform. It's awesome. So
perfect. All right, the show's a wrap. That's all we need.
I appreciate it. I went to school at Tufts University. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I switched to architecture. I was going to minor in it. They didn't offer it as a major. Tufts is well known for engineering, but in my junior year, they started to offer it as a major. I was like, well, that's the only thing I really like that I've been interested in. So I went with that. I graduated. I would have had to go to multiple years to be eligible for licensure. So I just started working in a firm. And short story is, I realized I had no clue what the hell I was doing. And I was like, wait a minute. My job is to tell people what to build and how to build it, but I've never built a thing in my life. Like, how is this sensical? I was really just a draft monkey. And I didn't know what I was drawing. And I was super insecure about that. And at some point, while at that studio, a colleague was like, the derivation of the word architect goes back to Greek antiquity and means master builder. And I was like, really? No, how could I not know that? And I looked it up in a dictionary, and I was like, oh yeah, that's what it says. And that opened the door to me on my, the void I needed to fill. And so I actually I was in LA at the time working at the studio. I went back to New England. I started working as a carpenter just to fill that void. I got fired because I was never a great carpenter. and I started this company just as a buddy kind of was like, hey, let's start doing this. And then he left a few years in, and it's been over 20 years now since then. So
that's awesome. And I think like one of my favorite, because you have like so many, metaphors and stuff. It was something about like a chef and a recipe.
It's like a chef who's never cooked.
Right. When you come out of architecture school and you're supposed to draw stuff, but you've never actually built anything, like that doesn't really make any sense.
It's a great analogy. But it's been completely accepted as the norm. I will not say it's the biggest PR. I would say it's the biggest unknown PR play ever, because the architect and builder, at a certain point, I did a very, very deep dive into the history of like, how the hell did this happen? Okay. I know in Greek antiquity, you came up through the trades. That's where that name master comes from, apprentice, journeyman, master. When did it change? And I found it really didn't change until the mid 1800s. And then the way that it got so into the culture, like it's totally normal that these things are separated, even though it doesn't make any sense, is because the universities took over the education of an architect, and the books started to be written in such a way that it was always separated. They made it appear like it was always separated. And it's not true though, so that has been a PR play that people are duped on. But when you have this conversation, I'm sure you do too, people are like, oh yeah, it doesn't really make sense.
Right. Like, at what point did an architect stop actually, being involved in construction or even building? right? It doesn't. When you really think back, it doesn't make any sense. Why would you pay someone separate? I guess there's, then a legal system built out around that.
Yeah.
At some point.
Yeah.
There's a class system certainly
Yep.
involved with it.
Vested interest now. They're not having a single source of accountability, because that's the problem. There was always that, and then by default, because it was over time. It wasn't like this; it was gradual. Because the original founders of the AIA and in England, RIBA, they were builders, so they knew their stuff,
Yeah.
And it was just generationally, it got switched to a university curriculum, and then it's been over 6 generations since then, where every generation a little more separated, and then the architect became unable to be responsible for the execution, and that's how it went down. But because it was gradual, and because it was kind of made to appear like it had always been that way, it was not particularly noticed.
Well, in 20 years of running and growing a design build company that is both designing and building residential projects, similar to us, right? Additions, remodels. You guys might do an occasional home, something like that. Are there ever days where you're like, well, it'd be way easier to just design?
No. I love it. I mean,
yeah.
I think, agree. I think I enjoy designing. I think the context of it is like to only design independent of the execution. In terms of like, if I'm going to be responsible for it, heck no. If I'm going to go do sketches for my sister who's in Wilmette, like I'm going to advise her, okay, good. We've gotten these ideas out. Like, I love that. But now, like, figure out somebody who's going to own that and carry it through to completion.
Well, and especially in the residential world. So just a little bit, not to make this about me, but a little bit of my story. Coming out of architecture school, I loved houses, and I wanted to figure out how to get involved in designing houses. Right? That's like my passion. That's a really hard industry to get into in the design world. There's kind of there's a super elite path, which is billionaires' homes, right? We're talking about $10, $20 million homes plus all over the place, especially in the Chicago market. Those are very small boutique firms where it's like getting into the NHL. Like the percentages of people that are able to get hired by it. Like, I don't know what you'd have to do in your portfolio. I guess you go to Harvard, something like that. But it's really, really hard in my experience, especially coming from Virginia Tech, moving to Chicago, to even get a look from those firms. So then what are you kind of left with? You're left with big home builders. You're left with fragmented architectural community of doing really good small scale residential work, essentially out of their basements, right? Because they're charging $5,000-$10,000, basically whittling their fee down to $2.50 an hour because that's what the market allows. So I was always kind of scratching my head, like, how do you actually cut your teeth in real residential architecture? Why can't we offer good design to more people? And after working for commercial firms and then working for like the epitome, in my opinion, is like the Optima. So that was multifamily, but it was architect run, total vertical integration, development, realtor, property management on rentals, general contractor, and architect.
That's who you worked for?
I worked for Optima for a couple of years, in Chicago.
That's cool. Was that your first job out of college, or?
That was my second one. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's David Hovey. So he would be another kind of big design build proponent.
Yeah, cool. Did you try to get a job with one of those, multi-million dollar, like those that kind of unicorn firm, residential firm?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Brennan, Stool and Lynch, Crook and Sexton, all those guys. Those are there's some pretty awesome, 15-person superstar firms in Chicago. But
yeah. Was that an avenue for you that you considered, or did you feel like you kind of got the equivalent of that with where you ended up for those couple of years?
No, I think I totally skipped over that whole thing.
Yeah,
the level of detail that goes into those drawings where you're literally dimensioning a light switch an outlet location in an interior elevation to 1/4 of an inch, and then making sure the framing plan aligns exactly where that wall stud goes. It's a completely different level that goes into some of that stuff. And so I kind of skipped over that and went to Optima, where we're controlling the whole process, and really all our what we really care about is the end result, right? So the way that we got there was actually a lot simpler, and we had to make, an order of magnitude decisions to make the project profitable at the same time. So, you're working with real budget constraints, you're working with real understanding of costs, which, let's get real here. Architects, I believe the AIA contract says that they have to offer a level of budgeting. I think it used to. How do they know? How does an architect know what something costs? Especially in residential. Who's getting paid to do pay apps and review contracts? They're not paying CA fees for, regular residential. So there's no way, and you're not going to use RS means, right? So how is an architect going to know how much they cost? I know how much it costs because I build it, and it's consistently more than I think it's going to cost, and so I have to eat that as a business owner. So I know.
You're accountable for it. You're not handing, even if an architect does give projections, there's kind of like this whoops.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Did you were you pursuing an integrated firm, or did you have an inclination already?
Yeah. So, but I didn't know how the world worked, right? Because I came out of 5 years of architecture school. So we were on a different planet.
Yeah.
It was magical.
So how did you get that inclination then?
Well, so I always loved the whole idea of design build, and I wanted to build stuff, right? But I didn't necessarily feel like the best professional path was as a carpenter or even necessarily general contractor, because I think I had pretty good design chops. So I kind of thought maybe I get into development and home building at some point. So the first job I got in Chicago, and I've had a couple of my former classmates on this show too, so it's kind of fun to talk about all our different paths.
That's cool.
It was really hard, at least for me, because I didn't know a whole lot of Virginia Tech architects in Chicago. But my oldest sister, lived in Chicago, and she was at the mall and saw a friend that she knew from Lamaze class. Like, this is how long ago it was when people did Lamaze. And her friend was with another friend at the mall, and they started chatting, and her friend's husband was an architect. Like, literally, that was my in. And then I had an interview with the firm called Arc Ideas, and Scott Hinesley and Joe Pasquinelli, and they hired me for a summer internship. I talked to them about design build and how I loved that whole idea. And they're like, absolutely, we're trying to build out more design build on our front, right? So design build in that world was, you had a relationship, you were golfing with McShane Construction Company, big commercial construction company. McShane is hired by, either takes on their own development deal or hired by a developer, and then McShane brings on the architect. Yeah. So it was like even more opposite than what I thought. So we had, there was a level of integration, but it was general contractor led.
Yeah. Right? Yeah. It's a different beast. I think that's interesting to me. Design build can mean different things to different people. The contractual aspect of it, which DBIA, it's interesting. It's like what it means to me, I think is very different than that, but it's, I don't know that it's a bad thing per se. I think it can be misunderstood and have connotations that are negative, for sure, depending on kind of what the definition that you're considering for it.
So just to get back into like a little bit more of the fun stuff of design build, I have to talk about that epic call that we had during COVID that you put together. It was me, you, David Sellers. Was Peter Gluck on that?
No, he wasn't.
Peter Gluck wasn't. It was somebody else. And then, who was that?
Colin from Australia.
Yes.
Or actually, I think he was like in a different time zone. So he was Clinton Cole.
Yes.
From CPS Plus.
And then I brought on Keith Sawastowski, who was a classmate of mine who moved to Paris, and he ran a design build studio, and he kind of does his own kind of design build stuff in Paris. And it was like, I don't know, I was kind of starstruck, like hearing some of these guys' stories about and how angry they were. Shouldn't say angry, but passionate about like how messed up the system was, and they just went and did it, right?
Yeah. So that intention or vision, that was, I think I was calling it the design build movement. And I was looking to, because my vision is to have a body. I think part of the issue today in the industry, whether it's residential or commercial or whatever you're doing, is the segregation and not having a single source of accountability. And there's all these institutions or groups on whatever side you're on that are independent. And there is not this umbrella organization analogous to the UN, if you will, of like countries, right? That is looking to bring and increase communication, to collaboration, to get to a better result. And that quest is still very much active and alive with me. So we're gonna be bringing that back. That's still there for me, very much so.
No,
it's needed. It's really needed.
Yeah, I totally agree. And David Sellers is no longer with us, but he had and I had Ali Rood on the show, who did the design build movie, but it has a different name of it now. It was My Life in Prickly Mountain, I believe. Yeah, which she grew up in Prickly Mountain, and her dad was kind of part of that crew. And David Sellers built some of the craziest houses ever up there. I believe his son still lives up there, at least in one of them, and you can rent them and stuff.
Okay.
But then I had Greg Wallach on too, who I know through Remodelers Advantage people, and he went to Yes Tomorrow. He did classes at Yes Tomorrow. And then I had Paul McManus on, and he did classes at Yes Tomorrow. And there's like this crazy, and as a kid, I didn't know anything about this, but there's quite a,
I mean, if you did a lineage, I think of that really, I feel like that was at a time when, I equate it to this flame, or this torch of the design build flame. It's never been gone out, because it is rooted in common sense and logic. But at that time, it did not burn bright. That at that time, the AIA, it wasn't removed until the late 70s, had in their code of ethics an architect could not build. So, David Sellers and Peter Gluck graduated from Yale in the 60s, at the end of the 60s. And they were like, where the hell can we go just to build? And they were like, Vermont.
Right.
And they built, the intention was to build vacation homes as development. But I think if you were to like go and look at all the kind of connection points of that, I know there's Norwich University has a very strong design build program. There's a big connection there. Yes Tomorrow. Peter Gluck, I think, is the kind of OG, like the shining example. I mentioned to you, if you go to Gluck Plus, their website, he has these videos, which I think his son created. I don't know that for sure, but his son is a big Hollywood director, and these are so well done. And they just communicate the essence of design build and why it is the natural approach. And, their projects that they do also are incredible. So.
Yeah, I'll have to track those down. I'll put them in the show notes because I want to see them too. It's that whole, and I'm trying to think. I mean, this is episode 37, so I have all these like really great conversations, and I can't remember who I was talking to about it. But part of the interesting stuff about that, and of course it was the 60s, but they were literally building with what was readily available to them, which is something I've always been interested in, like building with off-the-shelf products and things of that nature. Which nowadays, the amount of materials that are available make a little bit, it can make stuff really special and interesting, but I think it's kind of gone the opposite way, where it just makes everything vanilla, where nothing is necessarily, geographically specific.
Yeah.
It's the same house in Florida that's built in Minnesota. Oh yeah, Michelangelo was on it. He's like, why do we need a Spanish style Floridian house in Minneapolis?
Right? That's super interesting. I don't know if you've heard of this book, but it's Thomas Heatherwick.
Oh, cool.
Human Eyes. Probably, awesome. He's one of the most well-known. He's actually not an architect.
Yeah.
But or can't call himself one, but he isolates that like homogeneous lack of place phenomena to he attributes it to modernism and but what I look at, everything goes back to this. Everything goes back to this, is kind of the stultification, if you will, is the separation. It is the separation, because once the architect was distanced from the field and unable to kind of innovate, which comes from a trial and error of execution and being directly on the precipice of that, it isolated and removed that from them, so that the innovation was stultified. It really, that's what I see as, because if you look at what those, a lot of those modern architects like Walter Gropius, I haven't published it yet, but I'm going to be publishing a piece on Walter Gropius and what he in the Bauhaus and what that was a workshop, bro. That was design build. He said multiple times, if people are still doing this stuff later or quoting me, something is wrong. It was not that. And this idea of international style, he was like, no, things need to be at a, so it, and anyway, I could rant on and on and on.
I think you're 100% right on that. I mean, you look at the history of Mies van der Rohe too, and IIT, like that was a workshop. There's wood shops and metal. Like this isn't about drawing bricks. There's an
Walter
essence
Gropius
that's deeper
quit Harvard.
Yeah.
He did not retire. It says in the this is in my article. It says in the encyclopedia he retired. I found a quote from the Crimson, which is the students' newspaper, him being quoted that he said, I've been here for over a decade. The whole time I've been trying to get in this workshop curriculum. I finally got it in. There was a grant. He got it in for 2 years. And the dean, he wasn't actually the dean of the architecture school. He was, there was somebody above him basically. And that guy was like, no, we're getting rid of it. And he quit. He quit as a result of that.
Well, and I think this is awesome, because I need to kind of I'm going to go back to the Todd Hansen episode where we name it, circle it, and point to it. We've named it and circled it, and it's Wabi Sabi, but I don't point to it as much as I used to. So I did a presentation years ago at a conference, and it was about design, and I was trying to, do a 45-minute talk on how do you design, right? And so I tried to break it into some certain aspects of our designs that
that's cool,
kind of identified them, which was a fun exercise. And one of them that came out of it was Wabi Sabi. And
tell me about that. What's that about?
Yeah, I didn't know that it was a thing, but it's essentially it showed up in Google for whatever reason, and it's a Japanese term, and I think it comes from art and pottery, where the making imperfections are what add the true beauty of what it is, because it has a human element to it. And so not Peter Sellers. Why did I just forget his first name?
Dave Sellers?
David Sellers. He has our first name. Peter Sellers is the Pink Panther. David Sellers, he was like the king of it, and he talks about it too. He's like, well, we had a 4x8 sheet of plywood, but my span was only 6 feet, and I didn't have a saw. So I just let the plywood hang over the extra 2 feet, and that became a moment, And I think there's something, it's not a mistake, it's intentional, but it kind of speaks to
some wabi sabi.
Yeah, to the essence of making that creates a moment. And I think we used to be, and we still are, but it gets harder and harder as projects just become more and more precise. You know, there's moments where we'd use IKEA cabinets and we have a 3-foot module, but the thing that we're creating is going past a wall. And so it's going to be like, 12'9". So now I have 9 inches left at the end. So then we create a moment where we put a filler that's tied into the toe kick. And now like, that's a special moment that we probably wouldn't have designed. We just made it intentional because we didn't want to get custom cabinets.
Yeah. Right? Yeah. I mean, I think design is problem solving, right? So that's what it comes down to. And I think the closer proximity you are to the execution, the more you're able to enhance your problem solving skills, right?
Yeah.
I think that's a big issue today, and why, you're finding these design build curriculums in universities are becoming more and more popular because it resonates with individuals. They see that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's and if you even go back to when you and I were in architecture school, and I'm sure they're still doing it, we were always making physical models out of chipboard, right?
Yeah. That helps. That definitely helps.
It's the same idea. You're learning from the actual relationships of this thing and rotating it around, which you lose some of that even just designing 3-dimensionally in a computer if you skip that step, I believe.
Yeah.
Right? Like
the
trial and error in the art of the making, which is like the purest form of what we do. Well, we're going to talk about business here a little bit too, but I kind of love all this theory stuff. So you also published a book on the history.
I did. Yeah. It's called Classical Architecture's African Roots, and that really was unintentional. So basically, in my research on how the architect and builder were separated, what I found is that the AIA's purpose was to raise their social status. It was not to better serve their clients. It wasn't to create better buildings. It was solely to solve the problem they faced, which was that they could not reach the status of a gentleman, because at that time, per the definition, this was not like an adjective of, he's a nice. It was in England's census. We came from England, so this is mid 1800s, and you could not be a gentleman if you partook in manual labor. So they created the AIA, and the same thing had already happened in England, to really distance themselves from the trades from which they all came. And so, where the hell was I going with this?
It's the African roots.
You do that? What?
It's the book.
The book. So anyway, they separated themselves. And they did that, and they separated themselves from the trades because the trades were considered inferior, lower status. The other thing I found is that, and I have this, Thomas Ustick Walter, he was one of the original founders in both originally the AIA formed in 1836. They disbanded. They then started in 1857. He was one of two that was both. He was like the founder of the founders. He's the one who got everybody together. He's the one that came up with the name. And he wrote the first American history of architecture. And in that book, you can get it, he credits classical architecture most definitely to the Egyptians, to the Nile Valley civilization. And it is true. And I started to look into it, and the book is really a picture book showing each principle of classical architecture, how it comes from nature, each order. And you see, and it's really like, hey, look for yourself what's true for you. It's not intended to come across of like, look how, whatever. But that's a piece of story that was omitted for the same reason that these men distanced themselves from the trades, because it didn't fit their play to reach their status. Having classical architecture come from Africa in the mid 1800s, when slavery was still, and you had the colonization of Africa occurring, it was like a no-no. It was like, no, right. That don't work. So that was omitted. So it's really just a point of like, letting people look at that, and I felt like that needed to be done.
I mean, just what a journey into research. It must have been like,
Oh my God, I was obsessed with it. I was obsessed with it for quite a while, waking up early, and it's a picture book. So I think that's the thing about it, is that the evidence is still there. You can just look, and it's not a theoretical thing. It's just look at the pictures. Look at that. Look at this. Okay. Make your own assessment.
And architects love picture books. Like, I have this incredible library. There's like 20 words in it. It's all just photos.
Yeah. No, it was
the best.
Yeah.
Well, I'm curious, like, because you went on a deep dive and all of this world, and I don't know anything about like Freemasons and all these kind of ancient organizations that are maybe, or like the stonecutters from The Simpsons. Like, does any of that tie through? Does it connect the dots?
I never have gone into the Freemasons to the extent people ask me that, because it's a super interesting, it's built around the guild system.
Right.
But I do know the guild system, went back to antiquity. The Egyptians were to the Greeks like the Greeks are to us. Like, there was a distance in space of like over 2,000 years. So, but that I do, kind of an interesting factoid that I came upon in that is that the Greeks time period prior to the classical age was known as the Dark Ages. And once you start to see monolithic stone temples appearing in Greek, it was date coincidental with their admittance into the Nile Valley civilization. Previous pharaohs had put a ban, but a certain pharaoh was like, opened up the doors. They created a colony there, and they were like, holy shit, look at all this. And that you then start to see monolithic stone temples in Greece. The other thing that I've never seen documented that I document in the book is that prior to that time period, there was only a tecton. Architecton, the word is date coincidental with their admittance, and what I have deduced is their education on the fundamentals of what they carried forward and enhanced and developed. They then developed the word architecton, which came from Egypt. That was the same word they had.
Okay.
So that guild system, I think was already in place in Greece. It was what was in Egypt, but that that progression of, hey, I'm starting out. Okay, great. Go do the work. Oh, I want to be a chef. All right, go cook some food.
Right.
I want to be a musician. Okay, good. Go play some music. You don't start with, okay, here are all the ingredients that you could hypothetically have.
Right.
Like, you just start messing around with it. Like, that progression makes a lot of sense, So I think that's really where, with this kind of umbrella organization, it really goes back to the education and having a holistic starting ground. I'm in Boston, known as maybe the educational capital of the world. There's a lot of programs that have a separate architecture, engineering, construction management degrees, and they are segregated. Right. There's no cross-pollination. There's no like, hey, let's all start together, have a common base, and then from there go off into our specialty, understanding we have this common purpose. And so I think that's a big problem that we're going to solve for. And you already see it. Like, there's changes happening. Like, firms like us are more and more in demand. Like I was telling you, like the market that I see ripe for the picking is the luxury market, because those clientele want the high design. They want great design. That's their first priority.
Yep.
Okay. They have the funds to kind of do what they want, right? So they look at that portfolio, and that's what draws them in. And then right now they just go into the funnel that is the status quo they're probably going to hire a separate interior designer. They're going to have a separate builder, and none of them are going to be fully responsible, but all of them will be a little responsible. So what I see is, stand out for that great design. You need to bring it because that's what they want. But then wouldn't it be simpler if you had a single source of accountability and we could, the actual cost wasn't 2 to 3 times more than what you initially projected? Would you prefer that? I see that market as just kind of right because they are in cahoots. I've talked to these guys, and it's not an indictment on them. That's just the system that's in play.
Yeah, it's interesting, and I think it does take kind of a shift in the society's perspective of a remodeling company. Right? Like, I want to do the most incredible glass addition on the back of my mansion in this incredible suburb, and I want it to be, steel and glass and all this stuff. I'm not going to go to a remodeling company.
Yeah, that's
right?
not who you're going to seek out.
So,
right?
But I think it is starting to shift. And I mean, obviously, in our name, at some point we want to say what we do. Primarily we do remodels and additions and occasional custom homes. But there's a reason we're not Dave's Remodeling. It's Live Companies, it's LivCo. And I think the industry has grown and been elevated, and there's just so many great companies out there now that are doing unbelievable design build work. Zach DeVito out in San Francisco's design build, right? He's a FAIA architect, and he's doing high level stuff. Now they might come to him first just because of his name on the door as an architect, right? So we kind of shift from that. If we can get better at that, because to the antithesis of your point is that certain status level of society want to pick and choose their architect who's going to do this, and they want to pick and choose their interior designer who's going to do this, and say, I worked with this person, right?
Yeah.
Where if you come to LivCo, you're getting all of us, and hopefully you're okay with all of us, right?
Right. No, it is a point that I have observed, and like our branding now is really centered around architects who build. And we want to first and foremost, I don't want to say trick the person like, hey, we're just architects, but they don't know the difference, right? They're what they're been trained to look for is an architect who's, designs and past projects they love, and that they'll, be able to, work with them to create their vision. So it's really, we don't lead with the logic and, we lead with, we've got to bring great design, and then this person's going to be lucky.
Yeah, I mean,
because they're going to have an incredible, much better experience. That you don't see the experience. That's the tricky thing about it, is you don't see that. You feel it, you experience it. So, you could look at an incredible end product side by side. One could have been a nightmare. One could have been smooth as day, and expectations set and things went, but you don't see that from looking at the end product, right? So they think a big deal with the status quo setup is the inefficiencies built into that. And we were talking before about and then it's not just the practitioners, it's the insurance, the litigation built around that separation and that lack of single source of accountability.
Yeah, and that was kind of an interesting exercise because as an architect, I carry the license personally, right? Because I'm the human that is registered as an architect. So I have to have my own errors and omissions policy, so that if the architect does something that makes drywall crack and we have to replace something, my own company sues me. Right? Or vice versa. So it was actually a really interesting conversation with the insurance carriers, and you have to find the right one, because some of them are like, well, we can't, it's going to be crazy expensive because you're the only person to sue. And they'd rather just kind of sue, right? Isn't that literally how the entire
I mean, we have the same insurance. Everyone just sues each other.
Right.
They're not
Nobody
used
ever
to it.
pays,
They're
it
kind of
just-
like, wait. I'll give you another example is we have a program within my company because really spanning from my lack of any construction know-how is that it's not an uncommon thing to bring on new designers who have a similar background as I did and lack of experience. So we have them ideally participate, definitely observe every single phase. I think we've listed like almost 50 of them, and they have a checklist. And once a month, ideally twice a month, they're going out and they're participating in that. So there's insurance codes. So they're primarily designers, so they're coded for that. But once they go onto a site, particularly if they're doing anything or assisting in any way, there is no in the insurance world, there is no like, okay, well, you can just have a code for that period. And anyway, they're not so when I brought this to them, I spent years tackling this problem. If anybody has this problem, I came to a solution, and it's great. So, but it took persistence because it's not the status quo.
Well, and on that note, just kind of talk about your company some more. So do you have on-staff carpenters?
We don't actually. We have project managers
Yeah.
who are, they have a carpentry, they are carpenters by trade.
Right.
So they can kind of fill in where needed, but we are, subcontracting the trades primarily. That's how we set up our projects.
We do the same thing. Did you ever have carpenters?
We did.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
And I'm curious if you had kind of the same experience. What we learned is when we had carpenters, well, first of all, as we grew, well, I don't think that I was equipped to manage carpenters. And I worked as a carpenter in high school, so like I kind of understand the personality, but I just, I didn't really know how to necessarily manage them as a business owner. Number one, but number two, like our projects as we grew, our projects varied so much, and they just weren't the right fit for certain project types. It'd be more efficient to bring in other teams. So we're like, you know what? Let's just, bring in the carpenter group that's ideal for this and let them manage their own schedules. So that's how we kind of evolved. How about you guys?
Yeah, there was some conflict of, PMs are trying to get their projects done right the first time. They have a schedule to hit. They have, they have costs to work with. And so it was just really from them. They were the ones that pushed us in that direction. But it is great that they have a carpentry background because, sometimes there isn't really a substitute for that. And so they're classified as actually carpenters because you can't split them. And that's kind of a pain in the ass in its own right. But, we haven't particularly solved for that in a way that's good for us. But that's the outcome that we've had. But, one thing we're looking at now is to create like an estate plan and have the ability when we do a project for folks to maintain their home. And so I am looking at that. And I don't know if we're going to bring on a carpenter for that but sometimes it's great to have, punch lists or, to like get us to that, to that next step. It is really nice to have folks that can just do the work.
Yeah, we have Danny's our field tech, and he's kind of the guy who wraps all that stuff up at the end, and so everybody knows him well, and he always has a smile on his face, and it's always Danny, and it's always consistent. Awesome. So that is like an important piece. But I wouldn't have him frame an addition by himself, right?
Yeah. It wouldn't go well.
Yeah, and on the carpenter thing, I had Greg Wallach on a while ago, and he's a former carpenter. And I just love, like in all the personality brain types I've come across, the carpenter is my favorite. I don't know. Maybe it's because I worked with carpenters in the field, and I just have an appreciation for their no nonsenseness and their ability to literally visualize and plan out everything that they're going to do the next day while they sleep at night.
Yeah.
It's
No, I hear you. I'm thinking of examples on my team where it's just, I could not have done it. I could not have figured out,
yeah.
um, you know, what some of the problem solving that they come up with. So,
Well, like we have this really cool wine room project down here in Raleigh that's all done, and of course it's of my own making because I have this curved stair and it's all wrapped with curved cabinetry. It's beautiful, but yeah, it was all my fault, right? And like it has to be like this, and it's worth every second of it. But the carpentry of it, we had to probably do about 4 times, right? Because you you think it's going to go one way and you're like, okay, now I understand this relationship with the stair going here. This is going to have to move over. But the carpenter was great about it. But what he'd always do is he'd meet me there like on Tuesday and he'd be like, I'll be here on Thursday, but let me come look at it on Tuesday. He would come there on Tuesday. And then by Wednesday, he'd say, I need this, 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 and this. He'd come there on Thursday. Cool. He'd get it done in 45 minutes. Because he figured out the entire sequence of what he was going to do. Yeah. It's like if you ever build a tree house and you just stare at the tree for like 3 hours. And then you go, or exactly what the Prickly Mountain guys were doing. They're just like, thinking about it, and then they put it together, and then it's done, right? I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's that holistic approach, and I think that's really the issue with the industry is that where everybody was, had their part in the whole, there became sides, and if you were on this side, this was your job, and you didn't do this. This other side was like different than you. And I think we don't talk about it as much as from kind of the perspective of the designer losing that other part of the whole, but from the the builder side or carpenter side, looking at the theory of design, that was always part of the trade. You inherently understood there were certain patterns and forms that were inherently beautiful, and that was part of the tools of the trade that you would learn as you progress through
that. The party, the relationships, you're building a cathedral, right?
And I think that's one thing that I try to validate my guys in the field for is like, go there, like it became, that side became like order takers and nail bangers. But it is in them. I even heard Peter Gluck kind of give that innuendo, and I can't correct my OG on this, but a little bit I kind of am. I'm like because it's making like their sides and they're like a different species, but they're just everyone is just part of the whole, and we need to understand that and respect that and appreciate that because we need each other.
Love it, man. Well, we're over time as usual, but I'm kind of disappointed, Dave.
Yeah, man.
I'm disappointed. Awesome. No F words.
I saw your thing. I saw your thing on LinkedIn, and I was like, I did say, I think I did drop the shit there or something, but
I had every time we've just had conversations off the cuff, like it's like I'm in high school and we're like, fuck this. Oh, what the fuck is this fucking thing? So I'm amazed. Like I had no idea that you could turn it off.
I can turn it on or off. So you gave me that. I had my awareness on it.
No, I didn't care. I thought it was gonna be.
But fun. I can turn it on or off.
Yeah.
That was just.
I tried to get you going and overly passionate, and then you're gonna start really going on.
Oh yeah. Oh dude. Yeah.
This is really cool, man. We'll have to do it again. What's kind of your next passion project? You always got something going on.
This book. It's going to change the world. It's called I'm not sure. The working title is Rebuilding the Architect.
Okay.
And then some sort of subheading, but it's really just going to open up the door to what happened, because that has not been analyzed. And when it has been, what has been analyzed and documented and put in history books is false. As it has been manipulated to make it appear like how it is now was always how it was, but it is not. And people need to wake up to that. I think societally, once there is David Sellers told me this. He said, once enough people shift consciousness on a topic, it's like, it's done.
Yeah.
And we're getting there. So,
Totally.
And we are gonna create a more integrated system, but that's my life's quest. And I appreciate you being, my brother in arms on it. And just, I feel like, it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. And to tack on to that, I mean, some things that I really love about what we do is, and why I try and be a little bit more visible and public about it, is that when I came out of architecture school and we kind of talked through my career progression a little bit, I didn't know companies like ours existed. I think they did. There just weren't as many of them. And that's literally exactly what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
I just didn't know that was a real thing that was professional, that people can, raise a family and go on vacation and stuff like that in this world. So I like raising awareness to the young architectural community coming out of school. Like, hey, there's a lot of different routes you can go. And this is a pretty fun one if you love,
big time.
If you love the art of making and houses, right? If you have a passion for
big
houses.
Time. Yeah. I wish I knew what I know now, back then. So I think that's an important aspect of what we're doing is like setting kind of, Thomas Paine has this amazing quote of like, if there's to be trouble, let it be in my day so that my children may have peace. And
absolutely,
I feel like we need to do that.
And then the other piece of it is the changing the world aspect, which is like, if we didn't exist, there's going to be someone in Chicagoland that's putting a family room addition on that they're going to pay $350,000 for. That could have been better, right? If we existed, and we can actually offer a higher level of design than what has existed.
Peace of mind, just the experience, I mean, the lack of stress that you guys offer, the transparency, the ownership. Yeah, it's I mean, it's a big deal. I think it is the way it is, and buildings are built, so it's kind of like, so what? But it's really if you look at this industry and what's accepted as the norm, it is awful. It is god awful.
Yeah.
And it all goes back to the separation, the housing crisis. All goes back to the separation.
Well, it's look at the electric car when you talk about, a change of consciousness, right? So the electric car. Elon Musk said, if you were to invent a car today, it would not be a billion little tiny explosion in this giant piece of metal burning gas, right? Like, it doesn't make any sense, but it's the standard, it's the norm that we've just been so used to. And it's been a really difficult transition that's taken, billions and billions of dollars to make people recognize that, this old way of powering a car doesn't really make any sense. And so I think, in the overall housing industry, there was a relatively low bar. I will argue for HGTV on this fact that it introduced people and a lot of social media to, a higher level of design that is available in the world. Now that can go too far, because people are like, I want that, and that costs $6 million, and we can't do it for $6 million.
While they don't say it, it primarily is design build.
Yeah.
So it is kind of training people in that regard, and
absolutely, levered listed is basically what we do, right?
We're not ending, right? We're just going to keep talking, right?
I know.
Well, I think it's like the youth. Your point on the youth, I think because once you're in it, once you're in the system, it's hard to switch off. Like even you got to a certain point where you're like, where am I? I want to go in this direction. I have this license. I have this degree. There was only so many options for you. And if you had taken that move to the firm that's serving the billionaires, you could have been locked into that. And that's your play, and that's right. And now your livelihoods, and you got a kid, and it's like, so like that younger generation that's figuring things out and going where they want to go, that is the right person. That's the right audience for us to bring up and increase awareness on.
Yeah, man. Change the world one house at a time, something like that. Yeah. So my running joke on the show is it's a 30-minute show, but it always goes long. And then right when I say it's time to wrap, that's when we get into really good conversation and go on for like 20 minutes. I do try and keep it under an hour. So we can wrap now, but Dave, this is awesome, man. It's so great to catch up. I think I'll be in Boston later on this summer with my kids. So
oh, nice, dude. Shoot me a text. Let me know when. Would love to get together. I'll show you my place. If it's in Lexington, it's a great place to visit. Awesome. Historical, lots of stuff to do there. Our 250th anniversary.
Let's do it. That sounds like fun.
Yeah. Please let me know.
Dave, thanks again, man. Any final closing thoughts here?
No, just thank you, Dave. I think you set an amazing example. You've helped me personally and my business, and you're a tremendous advocate. And so let's keep rolling together. Let's do this.
Let's do it. Thanks, man. We'll talk soon.
All right, brother.
Bye.